think about, let me set that over there, please. Now, if you're really stingy with your color and your paint, this is going to be really hard for you because that is some thick paint. All right? So let me get this going.
It gives it almost like a stamp.
Okay, so this is called the, good job, Jelly. I'm glad you recognized that. This is called the ink gouache off. So this guy's going to come into play at the end, but what happens is you're going to wash all the gouache off and it leaves that printed piece feel to it. Because there's no opaque paint that will be left on this thing. It's all about, it's as close to printmaking as you can get.
So wait.
In this class.
You said you washed the gouache.
Trust me. Oh, I forgot my tape. Who's got some tape?
I got some.
Can you hand me some? Oh, blue tape. I can't use blue tape.
I got some.
White tape. Too thin tape.
Okay.
Okay, so what do you guys notice about the edge of my board here? Lily? I taped it off. And I have to demo that because, yep, you're going to baptize this piece.
Oh,
and I'm not,
my gosh.
I'm not just talking baptize. You're going to drench it.
You're going to drown it? Like,
yes.
drop the whole board like into a tub of water?
Why is that doing that? Be my friend, tape. Okay, so let me demo that really quickly. So if you notice, I've sealed the edges of the board, okay? Of the illustration board. Who's tape? Okay, so for time purposes.
Here you go. You need a little help.
I need a little help. I'm verklempt because I'm so sad that it's the last day of class. Well,
One of them.
the last demo.
We're going to do demo as well.
Yes.
So it's the second to last demo.
Finish my demo. Okay, so I put the tape on the edge of the board. Does everybody see that? It overlaps. And then I'm going to bend it over so that it seals that edge. Because you guys know, I've taught you already that the illustration board is just paper glued on cardboard. And if water gets in between the cardboard and the paper, guess what happens? It comes apart and it'll buckle and bubble underneath there.
Goes bye-bye.
So, if you can see now, it is now sealed and no water will get in between the cardboard and the paper that it's mounted on. Yes?
You said earlier that we could also use watercolor paper for this?
Yes?
So even for this project?
Yeah, you can. It's still gonna, like, Lily, hand me that image that's right underneath that one. That one.
This one?
Yep. That's just thin paper. Now, it's little so it doesn't warp, and so use heavyweight watercolor paper if you're going to use watercolor paper, okay? So what that is, that piece right there that's the paper that's glued on illustration board, and I just peeled it off because I didn't seal it good enough, and it started to bubble and come off, so I just peeled it off. And it's still fine, okay? All right, so where was I? Oh, sealing the board. So if there's a couple of pieces in there that maybe buckled and bubbled, but for the most part, it is sealed and the water should stay true or off of there, okay? So here I go. I'm gonna start to use thick, opaque. Look at that. That's $10 right there. Look at that.
Don't mess up.
Yeah. Just use watercolor first. They could be watercolor and then.
Okay, look at, oh, this is painful. Look at that. Do you know how much paint that is?
Too much.
That's a lot.
Looks like oil.
Yeah. impasto, right? Now, I'm just going to dip the tip of the bristles into the paint. Now I gotta harmonize it up because this is a brown purplish fish and it's underwater. So, okay, got that? Look at that. There's no way you can do details with that brush right there. It's way too loaded with thick, opaque paint. So that's why you have to break the painting down into simplified structure and shapes, because if you try to do the thick paint over this into the details, you're gonna swear at me. Literally, you're gonna go, what is that guy trying to do to me? Okay, now, do you guys see what I'm doing around the fins? I'm leaving white because I want it to have this really powerful, who said it was printmaking?
I didn't.
Or a stamp? Did you say a stamp or printmaking? I said printmaking.
I said stamp.
Okay, so with that idea, it's a little bit more like an etching or a printmaking idea. And so I don't think that back fin that's behind the fish, I don't want it to have a really strong line because it's clear back there. So again, I'm starting to think of atmospheric perspective with line work and all that fun stuff. So where you don't want lines or the ink to adhere, cover it. If you want it to adhere, leave it white, leave it raw. Hope that makes sense to everybody. Does that make sense to everybody? You're sure?
Yes. Clear as mud.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I've used the tip of my paint, so I'm going to lay it down on the palette and I'm going to roll it or twist it, and that unloads it, and there's a ton of paint there. So I'll pick it up and I'll start to go over that again. Those bubbles are going to be really fun.
Is it good sometimes where I noticed you got some thick paint on one of the fins where it sort of breaks up that line?
Yes. Yeah. You
Are
can
those good?
Sure. Yeah, you can get some variation. Remember, this isn't about lines, but I'm going to still apply some of the principles that we learned in the last project. So I want some interesting lines in there. So again, all that paint moved up.
It looks like a color by number. Yeah.
That's a, hey, you're back. Why did I want to talk to her? Oh, I wanted to make sure that you understood, because you wanted to go really thin and watery and wet into wet on this last piece. This is complete opposite. You have got to go thick and opaque with your gouache.
Thin to thick is not what we want to do today.
Okay.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Now, if you want if you look at my demos, there's a lot of broken edges as well, and that's called dry brush. So I'll demo that here. I'll demo that right now. So I'm going to load my brush, and I'm just going to drag it across. And so if you guys see that it left some pits and some lights, that will bring in some really fun black textures. Okay? So, now it's starting to get a little sticky. I'm just going to put the very tip of my bristles in, and I'm going to reactivate that gouache. I'm going to roll it so it unloads the bristles, and then I'm going to grab the tips of that, and I'm going to start to paint some of the abstract shapes into there. Are you filming this, Jordan?
Yeah.
I'm so nervous. I better
It's going on YouTube.
I better do. You're doing it for Jamie, right?
Yeah.
But if it turns out well, maybe I'll use it.
Sounds good.
Okay, just tip. Oh, I got it. I'm just reactivating that really thick stuff. It's a little bit more blue. So I'm going to try to get those abstract shapes in there.
So we're going thick so that when we run it under the water, some of it stays, right?
Well, it doesn't, the stain will stay, but what you're doing is putting a bed of gouache down so that when we ink it, the gouache will wash off and the ink will go with it.
The
Be
wash
patient.
will wash off
Yep,
in the ink.
trust me.
I'm gonna have to see it to be able to understand.
Trust me on Padawans.
I'm just like loading.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotta dip a little bit of water in there because I just used a half a tube of white, about $15 worth. Just kidding. Now, whatever you put, the first initial bed, I'm gonna use the word bed of gouache that you put down, the really thick layer. Anything you put on top of that means nothing. Why?
It'll wash away.
It'll just wash away. So I'll prove that here in a second.
Like with this, are we mostly just playing with how it stains the paper?
Yes. So all of these colors, and that's where it kind of looks like colored ink. It just feels like what's the term that I'm looking for? That first initial wash that you put down is the color, the stain that you're going to remain with. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
That's where it looks like stamped.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the washed off
'Cause this is the stain.
gouache
And he's like,
that I'm putting on here, but it washes off, so it leaves its stain or it leaves its subtle color, and that's what you're left with.
so it's almost like
Yes,
where.
exactly. I know exactly what you're going to say.
What am I gonna say?
I don't know.
It just reminds me of, well, it leaves the watercolor stain.
Yes,
And then, yeah, okay.
yes.
My brain finally understands.
Now, I haven't dispelled, I don't know if that's the right word. This fish is gonna have a black line around it, basically. At least I'm hoping it has a black line around it, like some of my other characters, right? So for example, if I go over that fish color with this really thick background or watercolor that I'm putting down, it won't matter. Like, oh, I messed up, I need to paint on top of that. It's what my initial bed of paint that went down is what I'm gonna be left with. Now,
It's what touches the paper.
yep, it's what touches the paper. Now, after you wash off, after you get done with this, you can go back in and paint on it as opaquely or as watercolory as you want. There's a lot of editing on those demos that I just showed you that you guys are looking at right now. There's a lot of editing that went on with that, if that makes sense. So sometimes you can control, but a lot of times, okay, so I'm trying to get a nice little edge right there, but my brush is so loaded. If you do use water, make sure that you mix really, really intently so that it isn't just thin gouache, it's mixed up gouache. Not messed up gouache, mixed up gouache. Okay, so I've reactivated all of that. This point right there. So I can come back in there and really paint that, okay? Now, going abstract shapes, and then I'm gonna group. This one's gonna be really fun to do.
So I noticed on a lot of the, on all of the demo pieces, all of those other than the pieces, there are like, the line work is like, has a lot of variation to it.
Yeah.
A lot of texture to it.
Yep.
How do we design that? Is that just something that happens because of the process, or do we have to like?
Yeah, you kind of have to
design
design it. You kind of have to, like, I know that that's going to be kind of a broken, jagged line. This one is really refined afterwards that I went back in. But like all of these broken lines and all this texture and everything like that is, I know what it's going to do because I've done this a lot. But that's why you have to do some practice pieces so that you get to understand, okay, I'm going to leave this a really thick white shape, Like if I left that white, that would be pure black, and I don't want that. But you've got to practice that so you know exactly what the gouache and the ink are going to do for you. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
I hope that makes sense, but I realize that when I say it, it's like, you got to do this when you go knock on doors as a missionary. And you go do it. I did what you told me. I know. But you got to learn as you go and figure out some things as you go. Does that make sense? All right. So here I go. You hated tracking?
Oh,
I loved it. I loved getting
it
yelled
was
at.
just so stressful
You
going
know
to
I'm
people's
kidding,
property
right?
and being like, I know,
It's
I'm
one of the
intruding in your
hardest parts of
space.
missionary work is going and walking down the street and walking up to a door and they slam the door in your face and you're like, she's trying to do my job.
Well, you're talking to someone who, like, people came to my territory. I served at Temple Square, so people were coming to me. So when I got to serve my outbound mission and serve in San Diego, it was like, I'm doing the complete opposite now.
Yeah.
What is this?
I
But
hear
people
you.
were really nice. I never got any doors slammed on my face, knock on wood.
Okay.
That's
All right.
nice.
You still tracking?
All right.
Right?
So I'm
still going
going
out
to
there.
go a little. Look at that. You guys see that?
That-
Jamie, do you see that?
It's going to drop.
Okay, I'm going to change the color up just a little bit. It's going to be a little
It
bit.
did look like that.
So glad, like, you're filming for Jamie though.
Look at that. That's just like
She might appreciate it.
$10 worth of gouache right there. I've now in the past I would I wouldn't use that much. All these pools are huge, right? Of gouache, all of these right out of the tube, and I've used more than half of them. So look at that. That white chunk. Look at that.
Look at that booger.
Yeah.
Keep getting worried it's gonna like fall
I
where you
know.
don't want to.
Goes into the water.
So again, what I was saying before is I don't want to dispel all of the principles that you guys have learned throughout the semester. So what is my value structure right now?
Light background and
Yep.
dark figure.
Dark figure on a light background, right? I have not that principle is still alive and well. Now, where can I do this? Okay, so look at the color that's right below the fish. It's already a kind of a greenish color, right? Look, I'm going to paint, you guys need to remember this. I'm going to paint right up to the edge of the fish. And I want you guys to remember, and we've got it on film, right?
Oh, that gouache wasted.
Guess what color, when I wash this off on Wednesday, guess what color that's going to be? Okay, we'll see. We'll see. I'm gonna. Now, why isn't it reactivating, Huntsman? Just give it a second, and you'll see that fugitive color, right? That not ugly. That either double-edged sword.
The knighting sword?
Yeah. The fugitive color. It's either gonna help you or it's not. So, now guess what else going to be a fugitive color? When we get going on this, say the ink.
Ink.
Is ink liquid? Yes. So, what is the ink going to do to your gouache when you apply it?
Reactivate it?
You got it. So, if you want a really ugly
Okay.
gray, black painting, guess what you're going to do? You're just going to paint thin or mix it a lot with the ink. When you apply the ink will reactivate your gouache and mix with it, and it'll turn it gray or black, and it will be not very fun for you.
Did you ever have someone turn a painting in like that, but it actually looked good?
That's a great question. Did it look good? Did it actually look good?
Did it, do its purpose where even though it's not exactly what the project was meant to be, it's still,
It could be a mood, right?
yeah. Like this
Well-
grimy, old, wintry feel where you're
Well,
in the middle.
yeah, I guess, but they can turn into black velvet paintings really quickly. like Elvis paintings. Now, if you haven't noticed, where's a piece that I want to... Okay, so this one, look at the edge. What did I do to the edge?
You left it blank.
I left it white. I left it bored. So I'm gonna practice that on this one. So I'm not gonna paint clear up to the edge of the mask or the paint or the tape. I'm going to leave it so that I have a fun printmaking type of scenario. I'm gonna leave those dry brushes on some of that texture just for fun. Oh, that's so thick. And I'm gonna leave some of the edge so that when I ink this, it's gonna be a nice dark frame or black inked frame around it. Are you guys cool with that? Does that make sense to you guys?
So after this dries, you put ink on it and then you put the water on?
Yes.
You dip it. How do you put the ink on it? You just like get the ink brush and just brush it on, or do you like get like a roller?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes to all.
Be patient, young Padawan.
No. No.
She said no? She said no.
I'm here to cause trouble.
Okay, I'm switching the color up just a little bit. Grab a little bit of raw sienna. I gotta grab just a little bit of water. Natasha, how much water have you seen me use to mix my paint? Give me a percentage. 2? Pretty good.
I say 4.
She's, okay. About less than 5%. Okay? That's pretty watery. It's starting to beat up, so that might turn black. That worries me just a little bit, but I'm gonna deal with it.
Can you put more thick paint on?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Great question. So if you understand that concept of, oh, it's kind of like paint by numbers. I've broken the image down into simple shapes. I'm going to do a bed of thick gouache over the top of the illustration board, but I don't want it to be black. So if I want to mix that color up again and go even thicker and go over the top of, now you're starting to dial into the concept of this project. Okay? Now I want that to be, yeah, I'm pretty cool with that.
Are you essentially just adding little bits of water just so it doesn't dry up too much?
Yes, so it doesn't become pasty and doesn't apply to the surface very well. So I'm just barely touching the tips of the bristles into the water, but in the end, I don't want to water that paint down at all. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that edge. Come in, paint that up. Now, obviously, you guys are seeing the second part of this painting because I painted this morning so that, yeah, so that you guys, number one, you're seeing the breakdown of the image, but this took a while to do, and I don't have the time to do all of that detail work, but you're going to have to slow down to do detail work. With the idea of, okay, I'm going to do my very best with the detail work, but if I mess up, if the technique doesn't do exactly what I want, then I can come back in after I'm done doing the initial gouache off technique, and I can go in and do some refining and line work and color work on top of the raw image. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I don't know if that sounded right. I don't think there's a demo image on there that was just do this, wash it off, and it's done. That's unrealistic. So if you guys I'm going to get it as close as I can, and there's an awesome aesthetic that happens with this. that you can't replicate it any other way, just like a lot of the other techniques that I've taught you. But you do have mistakes, and it's just the beast of the technique, and you have to deal with that, and then you have to take responsibility and say, okay, I just lost the face. I spent an hour on that awesome face. The ink just covered it all, and I can't see it. So I'm going to have to make it better. And so you make it better, and you're in control of it. But there's some awesome things that happen with it that you just can't get it. You just have to love it. Okay? Now, my gouache is now dried out, and it's really sticky. So I'm going to have to reactivate it just a little bit. And if I'm nervous about it, just a little bit of that beautiful purple. And then I'm going to come back in and get that really awesome bed of color on there.
You said you did this fish this morning. How long did it take you to do it?
35 years.
It's been there the whole time. This has all been an illusion.
I spent about 2 hours early this morning painting on this. Not that long. An hour and a half. Because I knew that this is a two-part process, and I didn't want to bore you guys with just sitting there painstakingly doing those details. Because that is what that's what you guys are going to figure out. So you've seen basically. Okay, I need some help. There's 2 bubbles here. What should they be, light bubbles or dark bubbles? That didn't help me. I got light and dark. Okay, I'll do 1 dark and 1 light. How's that?
What color are the highlights?
The highlights are going to be really light. Well, so that one's going to be a light because it's basically against dark, and this one's going to be dark against the light. So I'm going to go light first, a light green, and I'm almost out of white paint. That was a lot of white paint. But it's against green, so I'm going to just touch green a little bit more. Okay, so there's my light bubble. It's still not green enough. Because bubbles are what? Well, yeah, they are cool, but are they transparent? Yes. So they're going to be what is behind them. So that's why I'm going, that's kind of a blue-green, but it's got to be a transparent blue-green. Okay, so here we go. Now I'm going to leave the highlight, because the highlight has got to be, if I left it white, what would it be?
Black.
Black. So bubbles aren't black, right?
Nope.
Okay, so there's a light blue-green bubble. I've got to unload my bristles. So I'm rolling it. So now I'm basically going to visually mix right on my pure white right there. Look at that. You see that? And I'm going to dab that right on there. Dink. Boink. Okay. Now I'm going to do a dark bubble. So what's the color behind it? Gray blue, right? So I'm going to reactivate all of that beautiful purple color that I had there, that I did with the fish. Now, you guys are going to say, Huntsman, that's a really messy fish. Like what I just did with the highlight of that bubble, I had the shapes of those, where's my drawing, of the scales and the highlights on the scales, and I went painstakingly around them with that thick, darker color, and then guess what I did with the lights? I just globbed it on there. Why?
Because the dark's already stained at the bottom.
God, you're awesome. So proud of you. I'm going to neutralize that. there's not really any, that fin is the most saturated red color, and so for the most part I'm neutralized. Now, I had a color on my palette that's basically gone, and it's a gray. I love how they've made a gray gouache. So I mixed that gray into everything so that it would be more neutral instead of straight out of the tube, because I'm basically painting what? With the thick opaque paint, I'm basically painting straight out of the tube, right? And I don't want a garish, saturated,
Do you want to fill this in too?
you got it. Love your vocabulary. I don't want that, and so I thought, well, I've got to neutralize, and I got to do it quickly, and I got to do it cheaply, so I used the neutral gray gouache that is in the tube, and I didn't have to mix anything. It's already done, and that's how I neutralized everything.
Would you recommend getting that color then?
What's that?
Would you recommend getting that color?
No, not necessarily unless you want to. But for me, for my situation, for this experience, I used it to my, hopefully, you guys will have to be the judge on that. Hopefully it will be to my advantage, and it will work for me. Now, I'm gonna leave a little bit of a dark ink edge around that one bubble, actually around the two bubbles. This one's just gonna be a little bit heavier because it's bigger, and I want it to be a little bit closer to us as viewer. So that's what I'm doing, okay? All right, so there's my two bubbles, a dark against light and a light against dark. Now, what do I gotta do to the highlight? Bloop. I gotta, I'm out of white. I got enough. I got enough. There's the light.
So distraught.
How much time do I have? Okay, I'm gonna
20
let,
minutes?
oh, I got plenty of time. Okay, so this is gonna work, because if I was to just paint that fish, I would be just basically done with the fish, and you guys wouldn't get to see the whole process, right? Okay, so I gotta let that set up. Don't dry out on me. Don't dry out on me.
Do it. Please, stay with me.
This is a drama class too. So what would happen if I want that that shape highlight on a, what would happen if I just painted on it right now? If it wasn't set up, if it wasn't dry?
You would have a soft edge.
I would have a soft edge. Good job. So I'm letting it set up so then I can just glob that highlight color on there, and it'll still, that's why I'm getting sad. It's the last project, because you guys know, you guys can read my mind now. Okay. Okay. Oh, there goes $10 worth of paint. It's all right. It's all right. It's an investment.
Everything's fine. As the
I know.
room is on fire.
I was. Okay, so the next step, you've got, write this down. Before you ink, you have to make sure the painting is completely dry. That is not dry. If I went to ink this, that would smear and it would turn ugly, and I would be sad. Okay, so I'm going to, where's my lid? Faith. Did you cut your hair? I like it.
Yeah, I cut it over Thanksgiving break.
Really? It was cut like that last time? And I didn't notice. It's not very noticeable.
You need your glasses?
Yes. Okay, here you go. Okay, so make sure the painting is completely dry before this next step. Good job, Hannah. Can you guys read Hannah's writing?
Yep.
Before you ink, good job. Make sure painting is completely dry, okay? Now, I'm going to find the softest bristle brush I have. Why? Does anybody know why?
Don't rough up the paint.
Yes. Where's Eve?
I think a hard brush would scratch the ink, but I don't know if that's.
How come I can't feel anything?
It's on your dang neck.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes, okay, so there is a difference here. This is a really coarse brush. You do not want to use this one because when we ink it, those stiff, hard bristles will scratch the bed of gouache. It will then leave the ink in there and it will not do what you want. So you want to find the softest bristle brush. That is not a soft bristle brush.
It's a little sharp.
This is not a soft bristle brush. Spencer, I have Micron pens. Ooh, that one's pretty soft. Katie, could you get me like 7 paper towels? This is not a soft bristle brush.
I didn't think so.
I'm still looking. This is a soft bristle brush, but it's too small.
That poor thing is dying.
Where's my... What? There's a soft bristle brush, but it's too small.
What about those very top ones?
These ones?
Yeah.
They're brand new, so they're soft.
They haven't been broken in.
They haven't been
You get a
broken.
new one and you just like.
Like Bob Ross.
Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah.
Okay, I think this one. Oh, Katie. Thank you. Don't use this one. Okay.
Wasn't it bad for Bob Ross to do that with the oil paint where he'd always do the
Just put oil paint.
I think so. He's awesome though.
He was.
Okay, what am I doing?
Being clean.
Yeah.
Why?
Respecting the taxpayer money.
That's why I'm getting so sad. You guys know you're there.
Please don't get ink on your clothing.
Exercise. This is the
Stretch
most
out those
scariest
arms.
part of. Is it dry?
I'm not actually sure how to tell.
Is it dry super fast? You hit that hair dryer.
I know.
Okay. It's dry. What do you guys remember about this?
Green.
I painted this lighter color on top of that, so I want you to remember that. You're gonna have to remember.
Just pours the ink.
Here we go.
Oh my gosh. I was joking.
Did you hear that? Soft bristle brush.
Can you use a roller?
No,
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it.
Like a soft
I know.
you can't use a roller because of why?
and it leaves like some weird marks on
Thank you, and it will, it's reactivating. Ah.
For this one,
Oh, that's so much ink.
are you able to
It's
use
like-
cheaper ink since we won't be?
I can't believe he actually did that.
It's not too, I've only used about 20 cents worth of ink, if you think about it.
How much is that Higgins thing you got?
It's only like $5.
I didn't feel like it was that expensive.
It's not that bad.
Cars so expensive.
It's true.
So I'm a digital artist.
Do you have to,
It's reactivating.
do you have to wait for it to dry in order to wash all of it off?
Thank you. See,
Wait.
my job is done here. You guys read my mind, that's why I'm gonna cry.
It'll ruin the ink there. You'll
Yeah,
just see
might
the
reactivate the
droplets.
gouache.
Yeah, and it'll just
Okay.
Like watermark.
Oh,
be tear marks.
I got about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Cry all over my gouache.
Now,
Champagne.
All I have to do is look at them.
Oh, well, let's dry fast.
now, listen up.
Be like soft and just wipe it
if I sat there and used a roller or used others, I had to do that very softly because you can see that it's already reactivating, and that would turn it into gray mud, and that's what you not want to do. That did not sound right.
Double negative.
Do you get
What
it?
you don't want to do.
Okay. So what's happening is I don't want to touch it. I don't even want to hair dry it because why would I not want to hair dry it? Because that force would move that ink, and guess what that ink will do to that thick opaque paint? Reactivate it and turn it gray. I don't want a gray paint. I wanted a neutral painting, but I don't want a gray painting. Okay, so that's class. You'll have to come back on Wednesday and I'll unveil
Next time.
the
Immediate
painting.
statement.
Now, you have to, Ellie, you're absolutely right. This ink is gonna take, because I'm not going to force it to dry, it's gonna take at least 10 to 15 to 20 minutes to dry, and that's where it's at. So I don't want that to, it's on the mask, on the tape, and so if it starts to drip off and you guys are at home or you're here, don't let ink drip on anything at this point because, yeah, it will be horrible. It'll stain your clothes, it'll stain whatever. So that's why I'm gonna be very careful with that. I don't want to tip this up to carry it back to my office. I'm going to try to keep it as flat as I can so that doesn't move the ink and make it gray and ugly, okay? So, do you trust me?
Do you trust me?
What's it going to look like when I get done? Dang it. Yes. So, on Wednesday, we'll come in. Do you want to do this part or do you want to do your revisions first on Wednesday? Did I say Monday?
No, you said
On Wednesday, we'll come in and we'll either finish out the demo or we'll look at your revisions. What do you want to do? Finish off the demo. Okay. Now, it doesn't, let me say one more thing. I forgot to mention this because it's important. It may or may not affect it, but the other reason why I don't want to use a hairdryer is usually hair dryers have a heat setting, and guess what heat does to things? It changes the chemicals, so it could bake the ink on there and it wouldn't come off as easy. So I'm gonna naturally let it dry. Now, if it had a cool setting on it, I might be able to use it, but heat, you guys know heat changes the chemicals of things, and I don't want anything to affect this at this point. Okay? Any questions? You're going to have to do practice pieces. You're going to have to do practice pieces on this. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Good luck. We'll see you on Wednesday. Great class, great work.